Chapter 7, Episode 8, Landing of the Expedition. Falma returned to the imperial capital from Marseille and survived the days in the turbulent hustle and bustle. A month has passed since Bruno was in the Holy Land and began to research the elixir system. Spring break from college is over. Natalie Blondell's tumor has not recurred. Ellen and Pal are having their usual duel over trivia. Lot is commissioned to create a portrait of the Holy Emperor, and a biomass pool is being constructed on the territory of Marseille week after the construction plan was approved. It has been 4 days since Theodore died for the last time. It has been 3 days since Pal was able to use divine arts without singing. Falma went to work at the pharmacy today as usual. Falma, Sama, it seems that a telegram has arrived. Lot, who has always sent carrier pigeon messages, recently brought a telegraph log. How it came to this situation. The development of communication technology was remarkable, and wireless communication from all over the imperial capital began to invade the pharmacy of the other world. Once the wireless communication was registered with the Imperial Technology Bureau, the wireless communication between the imperial capital and neighboring cities would be established. In addition, other countries that were watching with their fingers in their fingers were planning to use it by paying licenses and patent fees to Sun Fleuve. Falma took the lead and decided on an agreement on the bands the nation would use to avoid interference. Also, the telegraph line was opened between Sun Fleuve Medical College and Different World Pharmacy. For the communications room, part of the third floor of the pharmacy was renovated to create a small room with communications equipment. During business hours, a special radio operator is available to send and receive calls. The rooftop carrier pigeons that were stationed at the pharmacy have not been spared but have been somewhat released. They are returned to their original pigeon coops and released during the day to live an elegant life picking food without work. Tom, the exclusive messenger, has also reduced the frequency of running to medical school. However, he never loses his job and maintains close contact with private households, pharmacies and pharmacists. As a result of the development of communications technology, Falma's workload increased tremendously. Prescription consultations are coming wirelessly to pharmacies across the world, and prescriptions are coming. In the midst of her busy schedule, Theodore said, "I want to send charts and reaction formulas." Letter pigeons are slow, so Falma suggested 2 main methods for sending charts. The first suggestion was to define the squares to be drawn, specify their coordinates, and send them. However, data compression is necessary to save electrical energy and manpower. Encoding was tried by radio engineers who didn't want to bother and used run-length compression and the like. White and black are defined by 0 and 1, and white black is represented by 0001100, which is further abbreviated to 422. Although the amount of data that can be communicated has increased, the increase in the amount of data has led to frequent errors in decoding. Therefore, Falma received a request from a user asking if it could be automated. They thought it was time for the computer, but Falma was too busy to devote time to computer development. As a last resort, Falma attached an electrode to the end of a pendulum and used the pendulum's back and forth motion to scan the surface of a curved copper plate to read the manuscript and send it to a remote location. The Pantelegrapho became the prototype fax machine. The principle was registered with the Technical Bureau. Surprisingly, it gradually triggered the invention of image transmission technology. A certain engineer thought that it would be more efficient to stick a picture or a figure on a cylinder instead of a pendulum and to read the picture while it was being rotated. Then, using a phototube registered in advance with the technology, the light intensity was converted into a signal read and transmitted, and the receiver converted the intensity of the signal into color density and described some thought about how it works. Just before the motion picture is shot, there is a movement. It is only a matter of time before someone comes up with it. Various transmission techniques began to be registered with real names in the technical office. Since Falma has maintained its anonymity, this means that the registration of real names of engineers and businessmen other than Falma has begun. If you register a patent with your real name, you will receive rewards and patent fees from the Technical Bureau, so it becomes like a competition. Engineers and scholars began to meet on the waterfront. Some even started companies like patent offices that created registration documents for them. There were people in the engineering department who went to work every day to use the new technology, and there were also people who came to register. Eventually they got along well and formed an organization that renamed St. Fleuve Imperial Technical School, which had been a vocational school for industrial guilds, to create St. Fleuve Institute of Technology, a public-private joint venture that included telecommunications technology. Came out. It's fine to compete individually, but the trend is for engineers to work together to improve the technological capabilities of the empire as a whole. I hear that preparations are underway to open a new school next spring with the Holy Emperor's approval. Falma thinks it's fine. When a technology other than modern communication technology and industrial technology is invented, it will be interesting. Of course, Falma, who often came to accept registrations, was influenced by this trend from the engineers of the imperial capital. When Falma came out of the technology office, he was surrounded by the engineers who were lying in wait and began to question him, so he decided to send Cedric as his agent when he should register the technology. Cedric, who has been in and out of the patent office at Falma's request, finds that registrations with fraudulent content have surfaced. Being well versed in the law, he took steps in advance to prevent unscrupulous companies from entering, and inquired with the technical office about the inclusion of restrictions on use and registration. Therefore, it was announced that things registered with the Technology Bureau will be checked in advance to determine whether the technology is valid. And malicious things will be severely punished after their real names and company names are published. While Falma was concerned about Jean's movements, he kept in close contact with Theodore and sent instructions. Perhaps because Falma is afraid of death from overwork and is too picky about labor management, Theodore got a headache when he heard that he had started building a lab at home. When you make a lab at home, it's hard to work 24 hours a day. On the other hand, as for Emmerich working in his own lab, Falma keeps an eye on him, so his work management is correct. Emmerich seems to have more leeway in his life after the title of nobility, so he no longer works as a pharmacist to make ends meet, but devotes himself to research. Mr. Theodore, did you go to work even though you had a high fever again? While Falma fretted, Celeste finished his customer service and wrote down his medication history while tending to his younger brother. Since Celeste moved to another world pharmacy near the pharmacy to deal with frequent attacks from evil spirits, children often came to play at the pharmacy. My brother seems to have found his calling as an alchemist and is excited, he said. It seems no matter how many times you say it, you won't be punished. Foo, I used to get sick a lot, but since I started working in this pharmacy, I don't have a fever or a cold. Needless to say, it was the gift of Falma's passive ability, refuge, but Falma smiled mischievously. Come to think of it, my younger brother was locked in his lab a long time ago, and when I asked him where he was in a closed room with a pot on the fire for 2 days. I guess it's carbon monoxide poisoning with a fire in a closed room. It's a joke that I almost died. That was really no laughing matter. Falma's face turned serious. I could only pray that the Marseille alchemists, led by Theodore, rushed in and didn't do it. Alchemists who use magic with water attributes are good at extracting medicinal ingredients and turning them into potions without using fire. It's just a process that uses heat. Accidents are bound to happen. Of course, users of fire attributes have a strong defense against flames, but equipment and facilities also get burned or blown away. Laboratory explosions and equipment explosions are also common in modern times. Occasionally an explosion occurs at the university and makes headlines. Falma worries that I don't want you to do all kinds of random things. I always try to get them to submit their experimental plans by phone or telegram, but I never stop worrying about them. I've given classroom lectures and safety lectures on organic and inorganic chemistry and special topics. How about asking them to wear fireproof, explosion-proof magical formations? Rebecca suggests. It would be better to do that. Let's improve the goggles while we're at it. Falma decided to accept it immediately. By the way, Rebecca-chan, isn't your complexion yellow lately? When the topic reached Rebecca, Selst pointed out a tricky time. I suspect it's jaundice. Falma didn't think so, so I followed him. Are you eating too many green and yellow vegetables or citrus fruits? Kia. Rebecca's face turned bright red. This summer, I studied at night to take the first-class pharmacy exam, so I didn't have enough sleep. In this way, Rebecca was able to smoothly bring what she had memorized out of her mouth. Starting this year, the content of the first-class pharmacist exam questions will include modern drugs, and the difficulty level will increase. If you study this much, you will pass, she said. I can say. While Falma was laughing with Rebecca, Ellen came out of the counseling booth and said, wait a minute. Suspecting it was a story to hide from the public, Falma closed the curtains and sat down in the alcove across from Ellen. What happened? Hey, Falma-kun. I have a question, but have you ever been unable to see for a while after an eye exam? No. Ellen didn't look serious, but she couldn't seem to help it. I do my best to be able to use the diagnostic eye for a long time, but the eye I use feels blinding for a while. What about pain? No. Am I concentrating too hard? Falma advised that it might be better not to use the diagnostic eye every day. Every time Ellen uses the diagnosis eye, she still consumes a day's divine power. It seems that they are trying to become clear-sighted in a very short time, but still 2 people are the limit. Ellen uses the eye examination. It's a strain on the body, isn't it? Falma pondered. Falma also uses his diagnostic eye only when it matters. There was no guarantee that a human like Ellen would be harmless if he used non-human abilities. Falma looks into Ellen's eyes, but they do not appear to be inflamed. No abnormalities were found on the eyeballs themselves. Being stared at by Falma, Ellen was a little embarrassed. Hey. Stare at me like that. Wait, Falma-kun has grown up, hasn't he? I'm worried, so don't make fun of me. Ignoring Falma's worries, Ellen laughed lightly and stood up from her seat, vigorously opening the curtains of the cabin. Foo, don't think too seriously. I can't let my divine power be exhausted and I won't use my eyes. Thank you. If you have any strange symptoms again, let me know. I'm curious. Understood. Thank you. It's really helpful to have Ellen help me, but if the symptoms persist, you should stop. Don't overdo it. Falma is taking care of Ellen, but somehow she feels something is bothering her. I've never felt dizzy during an eye exam. I immediately looked at Ellen with my eyes, but there was a blue light in Ellen's left eye. If it is blue, it means you are cured. Falma was convinced that he was temporarily blinded. Asterisk. April 16, 1148, the second landing on the new continent. As Admiral Jean stepped ashore, the crew on deck erupted in applause. Only 22 days after departure, the 200 crew members of the Gavan Continental Expedition reached the Gavan continent on the fastest voyage. Landed in the southern region of the east coast of the continent. Rich forests and vegetation spread behind the sandy beach of pure white sand. It is like a new world. This is the Gabon continent, isn't it? You've really arrived. Clara, who had low blood pressure and looked like dried fish, somehow managed to get stuck on the side of the boat and asked. I'm sure you've arrived, but I don't know what you call it. But that's how I got the name. The navigator answered curtly. Admiral Jean looked uncomfortable. Well, please send a cable to the mainland tonight. I'm sure everyone is concerned. Yes. His Holiness will be very pleased. As expected of Admiral Jean. I didn't expect you to arrive so soon. When it's a fleet commanded by an admiral, you can feel like you're on a big ship. Sailors praise Admiral Jean for his nautical skills. There was a reason Admiral Jean was so trusted. When he was young, he first found the shortest route from the Empire to East Idan and established his reputation as a navigator. He is a legendary navigator who brought enormous profits to the Empire by opening up new routes. fending off pirates who targeted the colony after the establishment of the East Indian Company, and winning numerous naval battles. The admiration for not only fending off pirates but also driving away the great evil spirits ravaging the seas is unstoppable. The admiral, troubled by excessive heaving, decided to blame the achievement on Falma, who was not there for the time being. This time, for some reason, I didn't even encounter evil spirits in the demonic sea, and it must be thanks to the efforts of the shopkeeper. Of course, I was surprised that I was able to go straight, he said. I hope I'm okay on the way home. Admiral Jean yawned leisurely. Clara also landed with a tired face and the unloading began. Fleets arrive one by one. A magical formation is set up on the beach to ensure safety, and a large-scale activity outside the vehicle begins. Clara happily dropped onto the beach and made a breaststroke-like motion on the sand. The land is the best after all. Sand. Sand. Now I don't have to drink motion sickness anymore. Young lady, this is the best. I throw up when I think about going home. Can I throw up today? During the trip, it happened that I visited uninhabited islands, but I was in a hurry, so I stayed only a few hours each day. Although the entire trip was short-lived, Clara had longed to see the country. Then I think it's alright to say a word or not. Little Admiral Jean climbed onto the packing crate and began the briefing. I think you all know, but the purpose of this trip is to secure a base and then survey it for reconnaissance and mapping. Unless it's unavoidable, don't fight as much as possible. Sailors listen with serious faces. Meeting uncontrollable evil spirits and chasing them out to sea is the end of the story. I can't escape. Clara's prophecy said that there would be no destruction of the fleet and no deaths, but this prophecy does not promise safety, and she could get into a dying situation at any time. We do not know what kind of evil spirits there are on the new continent, even if it is not wild animals. We will be divided into 3 groups. The Food and Resource Search Team, the Survey Team, and the Magic Formation Base Building Team. The maximum length of stay is 1 month. The food we brought with us is just too much. We will go home when we run out of food and supplies for our stay. Do you have any questions? Admiral. Yes there. Admiral Jean chuckled. Another ship's commander raised his cane. Aren't we supposed to eat the fruit, water, and animals of the New World? Absolutely not. The owner of the pharmacy in another world told me a lot during the departure training. The only things you can eat are the food you brought from your homeland and the water the wizard used. That's it. That. Contaminated by an unknown pathogen. Is it possible that it is contaminated even if there are no pathogens? It can be contaminated with heavy metals or something. I don't understand difficult things. Anyway, useless things are useless. Admiral Jean did not understand about half of Falma's explanation. But he instructed his subordinates not to eat anything from the immediate area, intending to follow Falma's instructions to the end. Food runs out due to unforeseen circumstances. And as a last resort, how to distinguish edible food and instructions on how to make drinking water are also given, but this is really a last resort. Basically absolutely drink. I was told not to eat. A user of the divine arts who can use the divine arts to detect poison accompanies them. But it is forbidden to overestimate that the divine arts used on the old continent will work on the new continent. A thorough investigation is not necessary. If you find rare plants or fruits, photograph them, collect them, and bring them home. Wildlife surveys will also be conducted within reasonable limits. Relocate the flame god magic circle given by lot in the research base and survey to the nearest water hole. Searching for gems and gold is also interesting, but don't be too greedy. Fame is deadly. Even if it's something unknown, you can tell if it's poisonous by feeding it to the dog you brought, right? Better let us secure the territory. So says Nola Notra, a knight and former page to the Empress. He was on board under a false name, but about 5 days after departure, Clara found out immediately and said, "You are Master Notra, aren't you?" The reason if the prince of a famous aristocrat is involved in a dangerous voyage is because of a secret order from the Holy Empress Elizabeth. He was smuggled in on a secret mission. Duh, did you hear what I was talking about? There is also a slow-acting poison. Wait until the food you planted grows. Is there an area you can't get enough of? You'll look out the new world. Is the flag of the empire not raised in the surveyed area in the territory? If you don't hurry, you'll be left behind. I can assure you, but we are the only ones who have reached the new continent. There is no country with such nautical technology. I don't know what to do. Admiral Jean and I chatted, but in the end Noah broke off because he was tired of the war of words. Nevertheless, the sailors paved the flat ground and cultivated it steadily. Checked the soil, built an enclosure with a divine magic circle to make it a field, and brought some beans, beets, melons, tangerines, apples, oranges, etc. From their homeland, seeds and seedlings were planted. Fruit of the earth. The user of the divine arts with the earth attribute cooperates to apply the divine arts of force and cultivation. As these crops grow, they return to their homelands and return to their beginnings to provide a secure food supply. Local fruit can be brought back and tested to confirm it is not poisonous before it is next eaten. Be patient here. In regular communication with the Empire that night, the news of Gavin's landing on the continent was brilliantly delivered. Only this time it's voice communication instead of Morse code. The sailors who accepted the Holy Emperor's applause were deeply moved. At night the sailors returned to the ship and spent the night for safety reasons and to avoid encounters with evil spirits. At night, all the cabins were locked to protect against intruders on the ship and guarded by magical covens, and they took turns keeping watch. The next morning, exploration activities for the continent began early. In the morning, a few hours after the search began, the base suddenly became frantic. It's a lake. There was a clear freshwater lake. A search party found a large lake about a kilometer inland and returned. If there's a watering the hole, I'm happy to start a village. When you find a watering the hole, it was a rule that the discoverer could name it, right? That's why it was called Lake Gabon, Lacta Gabon. Wow, why did you put my name on there? I wanted to make the place name of the destination identical to Gavin. Good. Admiral Jean, slightly bemoaning the shaky response, noticed something while fiddling with his beard. How did you check the fresh water? Could it be that you drank it? I got a splash in my mouth. The sailor had lame excuses. I want to wash my body a little, but isn't it nice to take a bath? Are there any dangerous creatures in the lake? Crocodile was sunning himself, but I drove him there with the divine art barrier. It's reliable because it doesn't flinch when encountering large carnivores. There could be man-eating fish, he said. The water is so clear you can see all the way to the bottom of the lake, but other than crocodiles, there were no large creatures. The escort divine arts user reports. The encounter with a crocodile would be a big problem for a simple sailor, but he was able to dismiss it easily because he was accompanied by a mage. Admiral Jean is prodded. When you bathe, it's called filling a container with water and putting some kind of medicine in it. Swimming in lakes and rivers is out of the question. Jean raises and lowers his glasses, confirming Falma's absolute attention. Marjolaine Poincaré, the pharmacist present and listening, also agreed. She is Bruno's oldest student and a clinician who has 2 qualifications. An alchemist and a first-class pharmacist. Having participated in Falma's preparatory training, he accompanied Bruno on orders. Master Falma de Medici said that if it is unavoidable to use local raw water, it is essential to carry out a water quality test and a microbiological examination. He said that purification spells are not enough. It takes time to test the water quality. It will take. But the sailors are deaf to Marjolaine's story. Such an exaggeration. How long will the water quality test take? I can hardly wait. It's getting dark. Even in my home country, it is natural to swim in lakes and rivers. What is the danger? It may contain toxic substances or heavy metals and cause infectious diseases. Finally, it is a trip with many detailed rules and tightening as a sailor. The stressed sailors seem to have reached their limits. Marjolaine is overwhelmed and confused. Why, I'm going to do a quick inspection, so please wait. You shouldn't drink the water. There are many bright blue fish at the bottom of the water. If there are fish, it's safe, isn't it? At least check the water quality. The sailors began to bathe with all their might, not listening to Maureen's words. The sailors, enjoying themselves and throwing water at each other, can't stop. The highly transparent and diffusely reflective water has a beauty that captivates people, and many people wanted to clean their sticky bodies from the sea breeze and sweat. Awa, Maureen's face turned pale and her hands stretched out in front of her. The cook looked at her and smiled as he held a snail with a golden shell. Look, there are many beautiful shells at the bottom of the water. I wonder if this is tasty. Such bare hands. Yakushi-sama are too demanding. It's safe if you cook them. Fry them with spices and oil. I'm sure they're excellent. Clara, seeing the situation, had a vague premonition and coyly warned her. It's better not to touch it. I have a bad feeling about it, says my patron deity. Again, you worry too much. I think so. Clara and Maureen, the pharmacist on duty, were faint, looking at each other and saying one word after another. I have a bad feeling about this. Even though I say it's dangerous from a health perspective. If something happens, even if we get an infection, we have enough medicine to last a while. But we don't expect everyone to get the same disease. Maureen pulled out what she called the regular medicines and hygiene items notebook and showed it to me. Despite Clara and Maureen's concerns, nothing happened to the sailors that day. Water quality and bacterial tests done hastily were not a problem. Turbidity, chromaticity, bacteria count, hydrogen index, overall there are no problems. It cleared Master Farmer's water quality index. Although it is not suitable for drinking, it is suitable for domestic use. If it is filtered, it can be drunk. Maureen seemed completely relieved. Nothing happened the next day either. On the contrary, more and more people swam openly. Some even started to barbecue and eat fish secretly. Even Admiral Jean had to admit, if the fire is passed through properly, the thread of tension is cut. There is such an air. The lake became safe without anyone telling me. This blue fish has crispy scales and is delicious when grilled. Well, I'm not good at fishing. Clara-san, if only you could take a bath. I can do it in time with water attribute magic. Clara-san, this is a crocodile terrine. I'll refrain from that. Clara stubbornly refused. Even if you think I'm a bad guy, it's better not to do the same if you have a bad feeling. That was Clara's survival technique. Within a week they gave in. Continental Expedition secured a safe living area several kilometers north and south of the landing site. Gavin Mountain, Gavin Valley, Gavin River, and the name of the place called Gavin. Both the wild animals and the emerging evil spirits were repelled by the experienced users of divine art. Noah seemed to be looking for a dazzling piece of land. The survey progressed steadily and a brand new map was created. Things were going smoothly and the sailors were full of energy. Except for one. The oracle of the patron deity. I wonder if it's turned off. Clara's heart palpitations didn't stop during the day, and she couldn't even fall asleep while praying to the traveling god. Speaking of Clara's daily routine, it is a great task to predict today's fate and give advice to Admiral Jean. Perhaps due to the effect of divination, none of the sailors suffered serious injuries or illnesses. Nevertheless, Clara sank too much, so the ship's doctor concluded that it was stress, and Maureen said, "Are you all right?" Clear feeling that it was not a problem with which it could be solved. Phew, it seems like there's definitely something. Let's go home early. Clara had tears in her eyes. Anyway, I just wanted to return to the imperial capital without incident. When Clara woke up from a nightmare in the morning, the sailors who had landed early in the shift came running back screaming. The magical formations and barriers that were built in the base have all been destroyed. What the hell? Admiral Jean, drinking his morning tea, blew on it. Has an evil spirit come enough to repel the magic circle? The expedition was in turmoil. After all, there were no places nearby where evil spirits could live, there were no large wild animals, and the users of the divine arts showed no particular reaction. No, but if it is an evil spirit, it is safe during the day. I can't help but use divine power, use a more powerful magic formation, and bring the luggage back to the ship from the base. Admiral Jean's instructions flew. The priests and divine art users present re-stretched the barrier and the divine art formation. It's strange. There should be an evil spirit sufficient to break the magic circle, but there is no trace of it anymore. The priest bows his head. Admiral. As the work neared its end, Major Ain approached trembling. Put something on the offering cloth and show it to Admiral Jean. What? I have presbyopia. There was hair on the bottom of the base. Please look closely. You're a sailor, aren't you? It's pitch black long, straight hair. The owner of this hair is not on our ships. And it is not made of animal hair. It is human hair. A shiver ran through all of us. You see, other countries are probably ahead of the curve. Where is it? Spine. Noah confronts Major Ain, but Major Ain shakes her head. Yes, black-haired sailors do not exist, nor do they exist on continents, in any country, or even in colonies. When this was explained, everyone fell silent. The only thing we know is that the culprit is not a demon, but a human on this continent. Clara and the rest of the crew shivered. Despite the sailors' uproar, Admiral Jean briskly instructed the adjutant. Send a telegram to your home country and tell me that there is someone there. However, radio waves between continents are not stable during the day. Right now. Impossible, even the fastest birds can't return from that far. I don't care if you can or not. Je suis à vos ordres. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to prepare your weapons. Point all guns at the coast. Keep the story simple. Admiral Jean put his hand on the pistol at his hip and put on his coat, still impassive. We are an invincible fleet that can silence even crying children. Whether on land or sea, we can handle war.